Hello and welcome to another episode of It Came From the Page. And today, we're nearly done with July, but I thought before we get fully into the end of summer, fall season, I thought I would talk about my top 10 favorite reads of the year so far. So every year, I always kind of drop the ball when it comes to like finishing off with like the amount of top tens that I want to do. So I thought it would be good to do one in the middle so that I have something to build off of at the end of the year. And also, we're going favorite, not best here. So these are books that I really enjoyed the process of reading, but that doesn't mean they were the best things that I've read this year. For example, Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt, probably one of the best books I've read all year, but was not one of my favorite reads because it haunts you like nothing else and will completely destroy your brain after you read it. A fantastic book, an essential read, but not a favorite read. I don't know if that makes sense, but I thought it would be good to kind of include some books that were a 4-star material, but I still had a great time reading them, and they had a big impact on my general enjoyment of this trash heap we call 2024. So starting off with Darkness Over Arkham. Now this is on here because it basically made me realize there's an entire genre of book that I've had for years, but I've been missing out on because I never took full advantage of them, and these are game books. So this is a book that is a story set in the Arkham horror universe, which is like, 1920s H.P. Lovecraft-esque storytelling, and it is a choose-your-own-adventure novel, but you also play through it. So you have like stats, and you have various characters that you can choose, and you have skills, and you can like roll dice to like kind of see if you've passed the skill test to figure out which one of the choices you'll be able to do. And I just thought it was really, really fun. Like there are clues in here to like unscramble like word puzzles and stuff like that, and it was really, really a fun way to spend an evening. And I only had to like go back and replay a few sections in order to properly get an ending I was satisfied with, which I thought was really cool. So this was just fun from an experience that I've known about. I've known about fighting fantasy books for years, and I had just never tried one out and actually played one. I literally owned these as a kid, and I just never actually sat down and rolled the dice and had fun with it. And it was such a good time, and I had such a blast with it that I've ordered a bunch of the old ones that I used to have as a kid, so I'm going to be playing through those in the future. Next up is a D&D book that I had absolutely zero expectations for. I found this in a little free library, and I just had a great time with it. This was called The City of Ravens. And this is one of those books where there is a main character who is a thief, and he's kind of like a rough and tumble character who's not the most noble of protagonists. He's got a lot of flaws, and he's kind of a scumbag, but you kind of can't help but love him. And that is something that you will see a few times in this list because it is a favorite trope of mine. The kind of scumbag, but also charming, roguish main character. And this book is just so fun because there is all of these moments where you would expect our main character to have a change of heart and to do the right thing, and he doesn't do it until the very, very end. So it's one of those books where it's like a guy who goes to steal an item, gets involved in a kind of a larger plot in terms of the fate of the city that he lives in. This is a Dungeons and Dragons book, but I didn't know anything about this. Like, Dungeons and Dragons books are kind of interesting because you don't really need to have ever played D&D. They're just like fantasy books that are like cool and fun to read. And I thought this was just like a blast and had like really cool characters and a really fun vibe to it. But yeah, so this kind of scumbag gets wrapped up in the fate of his city. And there's this great scene where he is with these group of adventurers. They're going down into this ancient ruins to try and get the item that they're going for, and all of a sudden a dragon appears, and everyone else, like all of the all the people who are like more noble characters who are like the side characters, they all like gear up to fight him, and our main character just abandons them instantly, just abandons them all. Just goes, nope, and just leaves. And you're like, damn, that's a scumbag move. But like, it worked so well, and it was very, very entertaining. So this was just like an absolute surprise for me, and I had such a fun time reading it. Next up is The Angel of Indian Lake. This is the third book in the Indian Lake trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones. And this had so much heart and emotion. Like, this is both one of my favorite reads and also one of the best reads I've had of the year, because it really hits your heartstrings. And the ending chapters of this are just, like, completely destroy you with how, like, beautiful and interesting and unique they are. And Stephen Graham Jones, like Don't Fear the Reaper, has a lot of stuff going on in this. So if you've only read the books once, I would definitely suggest at least go back to read the synopsis of Don't Fear the Reaper before hopping into The Angel of Indian Lakes, because there is a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things going on. And there were some deaths in The Angel of Indian Lakes that just, like, floored me. I was like, what? I did not expect that character to die. What? No. And, like, I love that some of the slasher vibes also kind of get mixed up with weird animal attack vibes. There's, like, references to Grizzly 2 the Concert in this, which is a thing that I would never expect to see in a book ever, a reference to that movie, because it's not good. It's bad. It's wild. It's trash. I've actually only seen the work print edition of that. I've never actually seen the new version that they finished and re-released, but that's neither here nor there. Angel of Indian Lake just had great slasher vibes. Always stream of consciousness with Stephen Graham Jones, so just keep that in mind. If you like his writing style, you will enjoy this, but if you don't, this one's not going to change your mind. And I just had a great time with it. And it was wild, and there was so much going on. Next up is Red Rabbit. This is a Western horror book that has so many great characters to it. Some great creatures and great horrific entities that are introduced in this book. It also just has, like, a great adventure vibe to it. I had such a good time with this, and, like, some of the villains are super kind of creepy and spooky and interesting, and there's a lot of unique characters that you kind of encounter along the way, and you really kind of get invested in this cast as they go throughout the Old West to help out a person in need, and it was just really, really fun. I don't know if I've read a book that was this much fun in a while, and it's great. Again, it's a 5-star book, but it's also like just an amazingly good time as you go through it. If you're at all into westerns or if you're all into horror, definitely would recommend this, because I think it has like a really good vibe to it and is very kind of unique. Next up, this is a duels. I have cheated and done doubles occasionally, but this is me. So this is technically a cheat because I listened to these back to back, and they were both like it was just an experience of listening to both these, and like they both have very similar vibes. So this is the Wraithbone Phoenix and Archnaut's Oath. So Wraithbone Phoenix is a Warhammer 40,000 story in their crime line, which I never read before. And Archnaut's Oath is from the Warhammer Age of Sigmar line, which is the fantasy side of Warhammer. They're not connected other than, like, you know, various demon entities appear in both. But like they're not, you don't have to read one or the other to understand the entirety of the universe. But they both kind of star very similar characters, which are these kind of scummy, lovable scumbag characters. And it's very much similar to City of Ravens, but both of these books are so good. Both of them were 5 stars. I couldn't decide which one I liked better to put on here. So the Wraithbone Phoenix, the Warhammer crime thing, it's basically like a hobbit and an ogre, but it's in space. So it's like in the future. It's a sci-fi setting, but the hobbit is like a great thief, and like the ogre is like this philosophical but also still a dumb ogre. So it's very fun. They have like a great back and forth with each other where they definitely care about each other, but there's always bickering, and they are searching for this lost artifact that was hidden by a hobbit back. I think they're not called hobbits in this. They're very clearly hobbits, but anyways, just go with me. I'm just going to use hobbits to make it the easiest to understand. But that they are seen as lesser than by the Imperium of Man, which is the main head faction of the universe that they're in, and they only look upon humans that are quote unquote purebred as being the only ones who are worth respecting. So this is there's this very ancient artifact that a cook who used to be a cook on this spaceship hid centuries ago because the society he was in constantly made him feel like lesser and made him feel like an abomination and a horrible person when he didn't do anything wrong. He was just like a person. He just wanted to live and have respect. So when he gets his hands on, like, the captain gives him this object to hide because they're all being boarded, he hides it forever so that no one can find it. And now this ship has finally been decommissioned, and all of these people are rushing to figure out if they can tear the ship apart and find this ancient artifact. So there's all of these different people who are interested in this specific object, and it's such a great adventure story, and there's such good action. The action is awesome. There's some really, really good action in here, but the character work is where this book really shines, and I just absolutely loved it. And it really did a great job of pointing out how fucking awful the Imperium of Man is, which is an important part of Warhammer that some people don't understand, because I don't know, but you understand if you read this book. Arknaut's Oath is a story about a swashbuckling pirate of the skies, and it's this like dwarfen pirate who has to go and get an ancient artifact to steal, and there's a bunch of other people also involved in trying to find this artifact. So they're very similar books, but the settings are different and the characters are slightly different. Like, you definitely don't get the idea that they're just like carbon copies of each other. They both have their own style, and they both have really interesting things to say with their own larger casts, and they're both really enjoyable on their own. But the main plot is the same between the two of them, is that a more despicable main character has to defy the odds to get this object that is worth both a lot in monetary value and is of importance in a society and cultural level as well. So both of them are just really interesting, and they both have awesome things to say about the universe, in that they both really end up making the grim, dark aspects of both of these universes kind of really stand out and seem like something that is unique and really worth reading. So I loved both of these. Next up is A Rival Most Vile. Oh my gosh, this was amazing. This is a fantasy romance. I absolutely loved it. It was so good. Fully have to thank Kitty for this, from Spicy Cats Reads. She would 100% put me in the target and let me know that this is a book that exists. So this is a fantasy romance between two, it's like enemies to lovers type, where there are these two potion makers who are located across the street from each other, and they both have their own style of how they do business and how they view the world, and it is just a absolute delight to go through and experience this book. Because these characters are all so rich, and they have such a great style to them, and the romance is so cute and so good. It's such a book that will just genuinely make you happy, and make you go, yeah, everything's cool. The world is actually okay sometimes. And I just really, really found it to be a cute fantasy romance. And I just, in general, really love more like laid-back, low-key fantasy books. I just think that is where I really end up enjoying the genre. Fantasy, for me, I think it's either got to be one-and-done stories, or it's got to be character-focused instead of epic fantasies. I don't care about epic fantasies. I like individual character stories. And I don't really care about the fate of the universe. Next up is Bury Your Gaze, which was so freaking good. This book was so good. I loved Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle as well. And this one, I think I liked even a little bit more. It's really hard to tell because like they both have their own styles. This book really has a lot to say in regards to our current era of technology and what we are going to be doing with the technological advances and how the rich and powerful will use technology to basically cut out the middleman and stop paying writers and creators and all these people who really matter. And this is a very pointed book that is about AI sucks. And it does. AI is fucking awful. AI is bad from a creative standpoint. AI has no business being in a creative place. It doesn't belong in creative spaces. And this book is a very pointed reference to that, but it's also about how queer people are represented in Hollywood, how queer people are treated in Hollywood, and it's just really well done. It's entertaining to read, it's fun, it's funny, it's pretty scary at times, it's very unique. You will have to kind of just go with the central idea of this, like the reveal about what's happening. You do have to like go through a few hurdles to be like, okay, I'm just going to accept that this is a thing because it works so well allegorically. You just kind of have to accept that what the main reveal of this is just possible. You just have to accept that. It's just, you do have to do like a little bit of hurdles, but I think it's really well worth it because once you get through that and just kind of fully embrace what the story is trying to tell, it's really, really good. One of the best books I read all year. Number 3 is Echoes of Eternity. This is a Horus Heresy novel, one of the final ones in the Siege of Terra line. This is by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, and oh my lord, this is the book that made reading the entire Horus Heresy worth it. It's really, really such a good way to cap off so many character stories, and the action sequences in this are just wild. Some of the character work in this is just beautiful, so well done. Really makes you care about characters whom you might not have fully found yourself attached to earlier in this giant battle. Now, this is the 7th book, and the 8th book is split into 3 volumes, and that's by Dan Abnett, and that's really good. Like, that is still a really good book series, but I like this one as the pinnacle of the series because for me it is really the end of the line in terms of like, you know, this siege that's been going on for 8 books. By the end of it, this is like they're going back and they get pushed back and back and back and back, and this is them at the final wall, and this is what they do when they have nowhere else to go and they just have to fight with all that they have, and it just really is impactful. And the 8th book, while great, it's like all of reality starts to like collapse in on itself, so like all space and time kind of get wrapped into this weird bubble, and as such, like there's not this line in the sand anymore because the entire line is just messed up and jibbly jobbled because of all the cosmic-y craziness that is going on in those last 3 books. And this is the last one where it's like you are in the story from the universe is still functioning as normal, and it's looking real dire for a lot of our main characters. And yeah, I just absolutely loved it. The fight between freaking Angron and Sanguinius is like some of the best action I've ever read. It's so freaking cool. It's so good. It's so good. And I loved it. Next up is Dweller by Jeff Strand. I love this book. This was such a surprise because I thought that this was going to be a very simple book about a kid who befriends a monster and does various things with the monster, but it was going to be focused on this version of young people and their relationships to a monster. That's not what this book is. It's about that at first, but it really goes through an entire life, and it's freaking tragic and sad and really impactful and meaningful and interesting to think about and try to examine the life of this very sad man, and his only friend is this monster, and he is also kind of a monster himself. And it's really interesting because they have this very tight-knit friendship, but he's also using them, and like there's all these very complicated emotions going on here, and it's a book I'm definitely going to revisit at different times in my life and probably have different experiences with. And I just thought it was really, really well told. And the horror doesn't happen a lot. So, like, the horror is very sparse, but when it happens, it really, really hits and reminds you of the sheer danger of this creature. And it's really impactful. It's a very special book, I think. It's a very, very special book that I loved. But my number one is Another Cheat. These are two books by the same author. They're actually very different books, but like one hasn't come out yet, so it's gonna be my my honorable mention, I guess. These are two books by Cameron Johnston, who is one of my new favorite authors. This is The Maleficent Seven and The Last Shield. The Last Shield has not come out yet. It is coming out in August, and it is basically a fantasy version of Die Hard, but it supersedes that premise and is way more than just being that, because there is this disabled Kingsguard who has to kind of save the day, and it's really, really done well, and it really respects disability well, and really kind of like expands upon what you feel like when you're newly disabled in a way that I found really impactful and really true to life. And it really reflected a lot of my own experiences, kind of like coming to terms with being disabled in a world that's definitely not built around abiding by disability. So this was just an impactful story that had great action, but had really, really good character work. And I loved it. So The Last Shield, definitely pick that one up when it comes out in August. The Maleficent 7, which is the one that is out now, is another one that has like a very simple log line, but is way more than that. This is basically like a fantasy version of Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven, which is the Western version of Seven Samurai. But the twist on this is that it's almost all, like, the seven are all of the worst fucking people you've ever met. So it's all of these villains who basically have to team up to fight a larger threat, and you don't really know who is the bigger bastard. And it's like, well, I guess we want to live free with these bastards rather than letting these guys take over. And there are so many amazing characters in the Maleficent 7. Like, the character work is so good. And, like, the premise is so well executed. The action is so good. The villains are basically like the church. And I love anytime it's like bastards versus the church, and the church is the bigger villain. I just love that. I'm like, mwah, chef's kiss. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. So many cool characters and an interesting setting. And these characters are hugely monstrous from the Seven, the Maleficent Seven. Like, they are monsters, but they're Johnston manages to find the humanity in the monstrous, but he doesn't let them off the hook for their bad behavior. So you really kind of appreciate these characters as three-dimensional beings, but you also go like, yeah, but they're still very, very bad people. Like, you don't just go, well, they're bastards, but, that's okay. They had a change of heart. And like no, these guys are bastards. They have done terrible things, and they are only in it for themselves until they aren't. There are a few characters who do actually have, redemption arcs that really matter, because there is this understanding of not all of these characters are capable, interested, or at all concerned with their own morality. So when there's a few of the characters who do try to supersede that and actually do something good for the sake of being good, it's even more impactful because the monstrous characters are not let off the hook. So both of these books had great action sequences, and I love them dearly. So what are your favorite books that you've read? I hope you guys have a good day. Toodaloo. Bye-bye.